I just got handcuffed in my own driveway, and it all started when I caught a stranger living in my house. I'm Garrett Blackwood. After 6 months on a cybersecurity contract in Estonia, I pulled into my million-dollar Tudor mansion to find an unfamiliar white Lexus in my spot. The door swings open. Out steps a blonde in Lululemon yoga pants wearing my late grandmother's vintage floral apron, my house keys dangling from her wrist. The moment she sees me stepping out of my truck, she speed dials someone. "I need police immediately," she announces, voice dripping fake panic. "I'm the HOA compliance coordinator and there's an intruder at the abandoned property on Willowbrook Drive." By the time I reach my own front door with the deed in my hand, sirens are wailing down the street. 10 minutes later, cold steel clicks around my wrists while this squatter stands there in my family heirloom, playing victim. What would you do if an HOA Karen called the cops for you coming home? Where are you watching from? Drop your HOA nightmare below. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting in the back of Officer Martinez's patrol car, handcuffs finally off, watching this woman explain to his partner how she's protecting the community. The vinyl seat sticks to my back through my shirt. Nothing like overseas travel sweat mixed with the humiliation of being arrested at your own house. I'm Garrett Blackwood, former Army logistics officer turned cybersecurity consultant. When Grandpa Edwin passed 3 years ago, he left me this 4,200 square foot Tudor masterpiece on 2.3 acres in Willowbrook Heights. Built in 1923, fully restored by a man who spent 40 years as the neighborhood's unofficial historian and amateur environmental nut, he was always going on about protecting the natural spring and preserving the heritage oaks. The Estonia contract was legitimate, 6 months helping their biggest banks upgrade security after some nasty cyber attacks. Good money, clean work, the kind that lets you pay mansion property taxes without eating ramen. Before leaving, I did everything right. Hired Meredith's property services, updated security, had mail held. Apparently, I made one crucial mistake. I underestimated the audacity of a desperate woman with a real estate license and absolutely nothing left to lose. Meet Vivian Thornfield. 52, recently divorced, the kind of real estate agent who measures self-worth in property values and neighborhood character. Her ex-husband's lawyer cleaned her out 8 months ago. Within 1 week of moving to Willowbrook Heights, she'd appointed herself interim HOA compliance coordinator, which sounds impressive until you realize our homeowners association dissolved in 2019 because exactly 3 people showed up to vote and nobody wanted to be treasurer. The smell of her expensive perfume still lingered in my truck, something French and obnoxious that probably costs more than most people's mortgage payments. This woman had been living in my house for weeks, maybe months. Her first red flag came 1 week before deployment. She knocked on my door with a clipboard and that particular smile that screams, "I'm about to ruin your Tuesday." "I'm conducting a survey about landscaping standards and architectural integrity," she announced, already photographing my garden shed like she was documenting evidence at a crime scene. I politely declined. Big mistake. Through my kitchen window, I watched her measure the distance between my shed and property line, scribbling notes with the intensity of someone calculating nuclear launch codes. 3 weeks into Estonia, my security company called. Motion sensors triggered. Cameras showed Vivian strutting through my backyard with a measuring tape like she was appraising the place for auction. She was building a case, documenting violations that didn't exist. Garden shed supposedly 2 inches too close to property line. Outdoor furniture not in keeping with Tudor aesthetic. The vintage porch swing Grandpa built in 1987. Deteriorating neighborhood character. I emailed from Tallinn. Cease trespassing or face charges. Her response made my blood pressure spike. As HOA compliance coordinator, I have right of inspection. Your grandfather's informal arrangements are no longer valid. That's when I knew I was dealing with someone who'd confused having opinions with having legal authority. Like a mall cop who thinks the badge makes them FBI. County record search revealed the beautiful truth. There is no active HOA. Willowbrook Heights. Homeowners Association officially dissolved December 2019 when 3 people showed up and nobody wanted to handle the paperwork. Vivian Thornfield had appointed herself coordinator of an organization that didn't exist, using letterhead she probably designed between wine spritzers and Zillow binges. Officer Martinez explains the current situation. They've verified my identity, confirmed ownership, but Vivian filed an emergency protective order claiming I threatened her. Until a judge sorts this out, I can't enter my own house. She's got photos, sir. Maintenance issues, safety hazards, claims you abandoned the property and she's been maintaining it as community service. The metallic taste of pure injustice fills my mouth. This woman turned my military service into evidence of abandonment, my responsible maintenance into proof of negligence. As I sign papers to get my truck back, Vivian waves from my own front porch, still wearing Grandma's apron. The cotton fabric flutters in the breeze, fabric that once smelled like Sunday morning pancakes and now reeks of theft. Game on, lady. The next morning, I'm camping out at the Extended Stay America down the highway, living off vending machine coffee in pure spite when my phone rings. It's Officer Cove, Martinez's partner from yesterday's circus. Mr. Blackwood, we've got a situation at your property. Ms. Thornfield is claiming someone broke in and vandalized the place. I'm there in 10 minutes, pulling up to find Vivian standing in my driveway like she's hosting a press conference. She's traded yesterday's yoga pants for a conservative navy dress, the kind worn by people who want to look like responsible homeowners instead of professional squatters. The morning air carries the scent of honeysuckle from Mrs. Cove's garden next door, a smell that used to mean peaceful summer mornings. Now it just reminds me of everything this woman is trying to steal from me. "Thank goodness you're here, officers," she announces, dabbing her eyes with a tissue that looks suspiciously unused. "Someone broke into the house last night, destroyed several family heirlooms." Officer Cove shifts uncomfortably on the gravel driveway, small stones crunching under his boots. "Sir, she's reporting that your security cameras were tampered with and several items were damaged inside." Vivian's opening move is textbook manipulation. She claims someone broke in through the back door, destroyed priceless antiques, and disabled the security system to cover their tracks. She's got photos on her phone showing my grandmother's china cabinet overturned, picture frames smashed, even what appears to be graffiti on the living room wall. But I'm looking at those photos, and something's wrong. The graffiti reads, "Fake HOA scammer in spray paint," which is either the world's most specific random vandalism or someone's trying very hard to make a point. "Ma'am," I say, pulling out my phone. "That's interesting because my security system sends alerts directly to my phone. I didn't get any breach notifications last night." Her face goes pale faster than winter sunrise. "Well, they obviously disabled it first. Probably some kind of hacker thing." Back in my Army days, I learned that modern security systems are surprisingly hard to disable without triggering backup alerts. Most people don't realize there are usually 3 separate communication channels sending data to monitoring companies. Cell towers, landlines, and internet connections all have to fail simultaneously for a system to go truly dark. Officer Cove asks to see the damage inside. Vivian hesitates, just for a second, but it's enough to tell me everything I need to know. Inside my house, the destruction is surgical. Only items that could belong to Vivian are untouched. My grandfather's books are scattered across the floor, but her fresh flowers in the kitchen are perfectly arranged. Family photos are smashed, but her expensive coffee maker doesn't have a scratch. The smell of fresh spray paint hangs in the air like evidence, that sharp chemical tang that makes your eyes water. Paint so fresh you can still hear the cans settling as the propellant separates. "This is heartbreaking," Vivian says, surveying the damage with all the genuine emotion of a soap opera audition. "Edwin's antiques, destroyed by vandals." But here's where she makes her first critical mistake. She calls my grandfather Edwin like they were old friends. Grandpa Edwin died 3 years ago. Vivian moved here 8 months ago. The math doesn't add up, and Officer Cove notices too. "Ma'am, how did you know Mr. Blackwood's grandfather's name?" "Oh, well, the neighbors mentioned it, such a beloved man in the community." I pull out my phone and call Tom Brennan, my neighbor across the street, on speaker. Tom's lived here for 15 years and knew Grandpa well. "Tom, quick question. Did you ever mention my grandfather's name to the new woman living on Elm Street?" "You mean the blonde with the Lexus?" "Never talked to her in my life, Garrett. She seems to avoid the actual neighbors like we've got something contagious. Why?" Vivian's face turns the color of expired milk. Then comes the real twist. Officer Cove starts examining the spray paint more closely, running his finger near the edge where it's still tacky. "Ma'am, this paint is still wet. This happened within the last hour, not last night." The security footage I can access remotely becomes my ace in the hole. What it shows is Vivian entering the house at 6:47 a.m. using her stolen keys, leaving at 7:23 a.m. with a Home Depot bag, then returning at 7:45 a.m. to discover the damage. "Officer," I say, pulling up the timestamp on my phone, "I've got video of Ms. Thornfield entering and leaving the property this morning with what appears to be spray paint. Would you like to see it?" The look of panic that crosses her face is worth 6 months of Estonian winter. She realizes she's been caught staging her own crime scene, but she doubles down anyway. That's impossible. I was only checking on the property because I heard suspicious noises. As the HOA coordinator, I have a duty to— "Ma'am," Officer Cove interrupts, his patience clearly wearing thin. "We verified yesterday that there's no active HOA in this neighborhood." Vivian's desperation shows in the way she clutches her purse straps, knuckles white against the expensive leather. The woman who seemed so confident yesterday is unraveling faster than a cheap sweater in a washing machine. "Fine," she snaps, dropping the victim act entirely. "I was protecting this property from actual abandonment. Someone needs to maintain community standards around here." And there it is. She just admitted to entering my house without permission, staging a fake crime scene, and filing a false police report. In my Army logistics training, we called this operational overreach, when someone gets so focused on their objective that they forget to cover their flanks. Officer Cove looks at me apologetically. "Sir, we're going to need to file additional reports. This is getting complicated." As they escort Vivian outside for questioning, she turns back to me with pure venom in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hisses. "I know things about this property that you don't." The gravel crunches under her designer heels as they walk her to the patrol car. I'm starting to think she might be right about knowing things, but whatever game she's playing, I'm about to learn the rules. 2 days later, I'm finally allowed back in my house to assess the real damage when there's a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I see a guy in a city uniform holding an official-looking clipboard. Never a good sign when you're already fighting off a professional squatter. "Ray Hutchinson, building inspector," he announces when I open the door. The poor guy looks like he'd rather be getting a root canal, shifting from foot to foot on my front porch. "Got an anonymous complaint about unlicensed electrical work and possible fire hazards." The morning sun glints off his clipboard, and I catch the scent of diesel exhaust from his city truck still idling in my driveway. The timing is too perfect. This feels like the next move in Vivian's chess game. "Anonymous complaint?" I ask, though we both know exactly who spent her morning on the phone with City Hall. "Look, sir, I'll be honest with you. Someone called claiming there's dangerous wiring, unlicensed renovations, code violations that could burn down the whole neighborhood." He pauses, clearly uncomfortable. "They specifically mentioned military deployment and property abandonment." While Ray examines my perfectly legal electrical panel, Grandpa Edwin had everything updated to current code in 2018, I start my own investigation. A quick Google search reveals that Ray Hutchinson was appointed by County Commissioner Dale Wickham, the same Dale Wickham who, according to his very public Facebook posts, has been dating a certain recently divorced real estate agent. During my cybersecurity training, we learned that bureaucratic warfare follows predictable patterns. Step 1. Anonymous complaint triggers official inspection. Step 2. Hope to find violations that justify escalation. Step 3. Death by 1,000 paper cuts until the target gives up. It's surprisingly effective against people who don't recognize the game. Ray's flashlight clicks as he examines my basement electrical panel, the sound echoing off concrete walls. "Everything looks professional down here, Mr. Blackwood. Your grandfather hired good electricians." But while he's checking circuits, I'm checking Vivian's background on my phone. What I discover makes my coffee taste like battery acid. Her real estate license was suspended 6 months ago for fraudulent misrepresentation after she showed houses she didn't have permission to access, collecting deposits on properties that weren't actually for sale. The woman's basically a professional con artist with a real estate degree. The pattern becomes crystal clear. Vivian's divorce wasn't just messy, she lost everything. House, car, savings, even her professional credibility. She's been couch surfing and house sitting ever since, getting kicked out every few weeks when properties sell or owners return. My mansion was the perfect long-term score. Isolated property, deployed owner, valuable enough that neighbors wouldn't question someone living there legitimately. Then comes the moment that makes everything click. I call Meredith's property services on speaker, and what I learn would be hilarious if it weren't so infuriating. "Oh yes, Mr. Blackwood," Meredith says cheerfully. Your wife called about 3 weeks into your deployment. Marital problems, she said. You'd moved out permanently and she needed to cancel services to save money during the separation. My wife? The words taste like rust in my mouth. What was her name? Vivian Blackwood, lovely woman, very emotional about the whole situation. She had all your account details, even knew about the special watering schedule for your grandfather's herb garden. Ray stops pretending to inspect my outlets and stares at me. Here's the nuclear revelation. Vivian had somehow discovered that I'm technically still married on paper. My high school sweetheart Sarah died in a car accident 8 years ago, and I never updated my legal documents. Too painful, too final. Legally, Sarah Blackwood is still listed as my spouse on every official record. Vivian found this vulnerability and ran with it. She'd been impersonating not just any wife, but a dead woman, using Sarah's legal status to cancel my services, change my mail forwarding, even convince my cable company to transfer service to her name. The smell of her expensive vanilla candles still lingers in my living room, mixing with the fresh paint smell from where she'd redecorated my accent wall. She'd been posting Instagram stories from her beautiful new home, tagging locations and everything. "Sir," Ray says, packing up his equipment with obvious relief, "this isn't a building code issue. This is identity theft, mail fraud, probably a dozen federal crimes. You need lawyers, not inspectors." But here's the beautiful irony. Every single fraudulent phone call created a recorded paper trail. Service cancellations require verification, address changes need documentation, utility transfers demand signatures. In cybersecurity, we call it digital exhaust, traces that criminals don't realize they're leaving. As Ray's truck pulls away, gravel crunching under his tires, I'm already planning phase 2 of my counterattack. Vivian wants to play identity theft games? Perfect. I happen to know exactly how digital forensics work, and I've got contacts who can trace every fraudulent call back to her burner phone. She thought she was stealing from some clueless military guy. Instead, she picked a fight with someone who spent years teaching banks how to catch digital thieves. Game on, Mrs. Blackwood. The next morning, I'm drinking coffee and planning my legal counterattack when my phone buzzes with a notification that makes my blood run cold. Vivian Thornfield has filed a restraining order against me, claiming I threatened and intimidated her at her primary residence. Her what now? The court documents arrive via email an hour later, and reading them is like watching someone rewrite reality with a crayon. According to Vivian's sworn statement, I'm a dangerous veteran with untreated PTSD who has been stalking and harassing her since she moved into the neighborhood. She claims I broke into her home multiple times and threatened violence when she confronted me about trespassing. The smell of fresh ink on legal papers always reminds me of signing discharge paperwork, but this document reeks of something worse. Pure fiction dressed up in legal language. The restraining order hearing is scheduled for the following week, but until then, I'm legally banned from my own property. Violating a restraining order is a felony, even if the order is complete fabrication written by someone who clearly failed creative writing class. But Vivian's not content to wait for her day in court. She's launched a full-scale character assassination campaign that would make political operatives jealous. Mrs. Cove calls from next door, her voice shaking with anger. "Garrett, that woman is going door to door with printed flyers about you. Professional-looking things, color photos, the whole 9 yards. She's telling everyone you were discharged from the Army for psychological reasons, and that you're dangerous around children." I drive to my extended stay hotel room with my stomach churning like a broken washing machine. This woman has weaponized my military service against me, something that should be respected, not twisted into evidence of instability. The flyers, according to Mrs. Cove, feature a photo someone took during yesterday's building inspector visit. In the picture, I'm gesturing with my hands while explaining something to Ray, but cropped and stripped of context, it looks like I'm being aggressive and threatening. It's amazing what a little creative editing can do to completely change a story. From my cramped hotel room, which smells like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams, I call Colonel Patricia Hayes, my former commanding officer. 20 minutes later, I've got official documentation of my honorable discharge, 3 commendation letters, and a character reference that could get me security clearance at Fort Knox. But here's what really makes my coffee taste like liquid fury. Vivian's restraining order petition includes a section claiming she's lived at my address for over a year, making her eligible for tenant protection rights under state law. She's trying to establish squatters' rights through pure perjury. Then comes the mini twist that changes everything. While researching property records to build my defense, I discover something that makes my blood pressure spike. Vivian's been studying my family history for months. She knew about Grandpa Edwin's environmental conservation work, his involvement with the local historical society, even his specific concerns about suburban development pressures threatening the neighborhood's character. This wasn't random. She'd specifically targeted my house after extensive research. During my cybersecurity training, we learned that most criminals underestimate how much digital exhaust they leave behind. Phone calls, credit card transactions, even Google searches create trails that can be reconstructed with the right tools and patience. I start building a timeline using public records. Vivian's divorce was finalized 8 months ago. Her utility disconnection at her old address happened 7 months ago. But here's the kicker. Her voter registration was changed to my address 4 months ago, while I was still living there preparing for deployment. This woman registered to vote at my house while I was home, probably banking on me not checking voter rolls before leaving the country. The real revelation comes when I dig deeper into her divorce records, which are public documents. Vivian's ex-husband isn't just any developer, he's Marcus Thornfield, owner of Thornfield Development Company, currently facing 3 lawsuits for questionable land acquisition practices. Their divorce wasn't about irreconcilable differences. She'd been caught steering prime development properties to his company through her real estate work, creating artificial scarcity in desirable neighborhoods, then swooping in with above-market offers. My phone rings, interrupting my research. It's Tom Brennan from across the street. Garrett, something bizarre just happened. I got an offer on my house, $50,000 over market value, but only if I can close within 30 days. The realtor kept mentioning upcoming neighborhood changes that might affect property values, said I should sell now while I can still get premium pricing. The pieces snapped together like Legos made of pure greed. The restraining order, fake HOA enforcement, building inspector harassment, it's all designed to create enough chaos that homeowners will panic and sell quickly to avoid the hassle. They're not just targeting my house, they're orchestrating a neighborhood-wide intimidation campaign to force sales, then probably planning to buy everything cheap and redevelop the entire area. The taste of stale hotel coffee mingles with rage as I realize the scope of their operation. But sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and I've got some phone calls to make. Time to show these people what happens when you target a veteran who actually knows how to fight back. The breakthrough comes from the most unlikely source. Marcus Steinberg, my grandfather's ancient lawyer, calling from his semi-retirement to drop a legal bomb that changes everything. Garrett, I've been going through Edwin's old files in my basement. God, these boxes smell like mothballs and regret, and there's something you need to know about that property. His gravelly voice crackles through my phone, something that makes this whole situation very, very interesting. I'm sitting in my hotel room surrounded by printouts and legal documents when Steinberg drops the news that makes me nearly choke on my gas station coffee. Your grandfather filed a conservation easement amendment in 1994. Buried in about 40 pages of environmental protection language is a clause that makes your property legally impossible to abandon, foreclose upon, or steal. The musty smell of old legal documents seems to seep through the phone as Steinberg explains what Grandpa Edwin really left me. It's like discovering you've inherited a secret superpower along with the family home. The original 1923 deed included standard restrictions about preserving historic character. But in 1994, when suburban development started threatening the neighborhood like a slow-motion invasion, Grandpa Edwin worked with environmental lawyers to create something much more powerful. The conservation easement protects the mature oak trees and natural spring, but here's the kicker. It establishes a permanent stewardship requirement. Steinberg continues, his voice gaining excitement. As long as the trust exists, the property cannot be legally abandoned, sold under duress, or transferred without federal environmental review. The beautiful part makes me laugh out loud in my dingy hotel room. Grandpa Edwin named 3 trustees to oversee the conservation easement. Himself, the bank president, and environmental lawyer Dr. Patricia Riverside. Edwin and the banker are long dead, but Dr. Riverside is very much alive and very interested in stopping predatory development schemes. I call Dr. Riverside that afternoon. At 68, she's the founder of the state's largest environmental nonprofit and sounds like she's been waiting her entire career for this phone call. Your grandfather was a visionary, she tells me, her voice sharp with the kind of excitement lawyers get when they smell blood in the water. Conservation easements weren't common in residential areas back then, but Edwin understood what suburban sprawl could do to established communities. Here's where karma becomes poetry. While Vivian's been trying to establish squatters' rights, she's actually been committing federal environmental crimes by altering the landscaping without permits. Those improvements she made to my property? Removing native plants that stabilize the watershed, installing decorative gravel that disrupts natural drainage, even trimming branches from the protected oak trees. Under the conservation easement, each violation carries automatic fines of up to $10,000 per incident. The irony is absolutely delicious, Dr. Riverside says, and I can practically hear her grinning. This woman's own documentation of supposed property violations actually proves she committed environmental crimes on federally protected land. All those photos Vivian took of my deteriorating landscaping, evidence of her unauthorized alterations to protected habitat, her complaints about my garden shed being too close to the property line. The shed is actually protecting the natural spring from development encroachment, as originally intended. The conservation easement also explains why Vivian specifically targeted my house. Research reveals that Marcus Thornfield's development company has been quietly buying properties around Willowbrook Heights for months. Standard deed restrictions can be challenged with enough political pressure, but conservation easements require federal environmental review, essentially making development impossible. Vivian wasn't just stealing my house. She was trying to eliminate the one legal obstacle stopping her ex-husband's entire subdivision scheme. The taste of victory is metallic, sharp, like the moment you realize you've been holding a royal flush while everyone else was bluffing with pair of twos. Dr. Riverside agrees to reactivate the Conservation Trust immediately, giving us federal authority to sue for environmental damages. How long before Vivian realizes what she's walked into, I ask? Dr. Riverside's laugh sounds like justice being served at exactly the right temperature. About as long as it takes a federal environmental inspector to knock on her door with a warrant. Game over, Vivian. The next morning feels different. Instead of waking up angry in a hotel room that smells like industrial bleach and broken dreams, I'm energized. For the first time since this nightmare started, I'm not playing defense. I'm about to become the hunter. Dr. Patricia Riverside arrives at my hotel at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a briefcase that looks like it's survived several environmental wars. She's exactly what you'd expect from someone who's spent 40 years making developers cry. Silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, hiking boots that have actually seen trails, and the kind of laser focus that makes corporate lawyers break out in cold sweats. First things first, she says, spreading documents across my hotel room's tiny table with the precision of a battlefield surgeon. We reactivate the Conservation Trust today. Then we start documenting every single environmental crime your squatter has committed. The sound of papers shuffling mixes with morning traffic outside as we build our strategy. It feels like planning a military operation, except instead of securing territory, we're securing justice with a side of federal environmental protection. Steinberg joins us an hour later, moving slowly but carrying a box of files that smell like vintage legal victories and mothballs. At 73, he's supposedly semi-retired, but his eyes light up when he talks about conservation law like other people discuss their favorite sports teams. Edwin was my most interesting client, he says, carefully arranging deed amendments and environmental reports. Most people think property rights mean you can do whatever you want with your land. Edwin understood that real ownership means protecting something for future generations. Our strategy develops across 3 coordinated fronts. Legal track. Dr. Riverside files papers to reactivate the Conservation Trust with emergency environmental protection orders. Steinberg prepares motions to dissolve Vivian's fraudulent restraining order based on perjured testimony. Federal environmental crimes trump local property disputes. It's like bringing artillery to a water balloon fight. Evidence gathering. This is where my cybersecurity background becomes a secret weapon. Every forged document, fraudulent phone call, and identity theft incident creates digital fingerprints that can be traced backward through phone records, IP addresses, and metadata that most criminals don't realize they're leaving behind. The physical trap. Here's where we get creative. Dr. Riverside arranges for wildlife cameras to be installed on the conservation easement land, perfectly legal since the trust has federal authority over environmental monitoring. These cameras will capture any further unauthorized alterations to protected landscape. But the real trap is scheduling a surprise environmental inspection during Vivian's next garden party. And because apparently she's been hosting Instagram-worthy brunches on my patio every weekend. using my grandmother's china and serving wine from my grandfather's cellar like she's running a bed and breakfast. The woman's literally throwing parties to celebrate her theft, Dr. Riverside says, shaking her head with the kind of disbelief reserved for truly spectacular stupidity. The environmental inspector will arrive right in the middle of her social media photo shoot. While we're planning, Mrs. Cove calls with intelligence that makes our strategy even sweeter. Vivian's been recruiting other homeowners for neighborhood improvement initiatives, basically trying to get them to sign petitions supporting her fake HOA authority. She's telling people that your grandfather's environmental protections are outdated and preventing necessary modernization, Mrs. Cove reports. Tom Brennan is organizing a counter-meeting tonight, says the neighbors want to hear the truth. That evening, Tom's living room fills with neighbors who smell like curiosity mixed with righteous anger, coffee breath, perfume, and the particular scent of people who've realized they've been lied to. These are folks who moved to Willowbrook Heights specifically for its historic character and environmental protections. Mrs. Patterson, the 80-year-old widow from the corner house, brings homemade cookies that taste like childhood and a memory that silences the room. Edwin Blackwood spent years fighting to keep this neighborhood special. He used to say that once you lose mature trees and natural springs, you can never really get them back. I explain conservation easements without the legal jargon. Think of it like a permanent guardian angel for the environment. Legal protections that survive individual property owners and can't be bought off or intimidated by developers with political connections. During my Army logistics training, we learned that the best operations are the ones where everyone understands their role. Conservation easements work the same way. They're legal contracts preventing environmental damage, recorded with the federal government, making violations federal crimes that local politicians can't dismiss or cover up. Tom Brennan connects the dots that make everyone gasp. So when Vivian removed those native plants and installed that gravel drainage system, she wasn't just trespassing, she was committing federal environmental crimes? Exactly, Dr. Riverside confirms, her voice sharp with satisfaction. Every unauthorized alteration carries fines up to $10,000 per violation. We've documented at least 7 separate incidents. The room buzzes with neighbors realizing they're not fighting just a property dispute, but an environmental protection case with federal backing that makes Vivian's local political connections completely irrelevant. By evening's end, we've assembled a coalition. Environmental lawyers, retired journalists, concerned neighbors, and one motivated veteran who's discovered his grandfather left him legal weapons more powerful than anything in his military arsenal. Tomorrow, we spring the trap. And Vivian's about to learn that federal environmental inspectors don't care about fake restraining orders. 3 days later, Vivian makes her biggest mistake yet. She learns about our legal challenges through Commissioner Wickham's pillow talk. Small-town politics means nothing stays secret for long, and decides to accelerate her timeline with the desperation of someone watching their entire scam collapse in slow motion. At 6 a.m., I get a frantic call from Mrs. Cove. "Garrett, there are moving trucks at your house. That woman is loading up everything that isn't nailed down like she's fleeing a crime scene." I'm there in 15 minutes, pulling up to find a U-Haul in my driveway and Vivian directing 2 teenage boys who look like they'd rather be getting root canals. The morning air carries the scent of diesel exhaust mixed with the particular aroma of panic sweat. Sharp, acrid, unmistakable. "Ma'am, you can't remove items from property under federal environmental protection," I call out, staying carefully on the public sidewalk to avoid violating her restraining order. "This property is abandoned," she shouts back, her voice cracking like ice under pressure. "I'm protecting these valuables from vandalism and decay." But here's where her desperation becomes comedy gold. She's not just stealing furniture. She's actively trying to destroy evidence of her environmental crimes. The native plants she removed? She's having the boys dig up her replacement decorative shrubs and load them in the truck. The gravel drainage system she installed? They're pulling it up with shovels like they're defusing a landscaping bomb. It would be admirable environmental restoration if it weren't felony destruction of evidence caught on federal wildlife cameras in 4K resolution. The real mini twist comes at noon when someone cuts the main water line to my house, flooding the basement with the surgical precision of someone who's done this before. The timing is perfect. Lunch hour when most neighbors are away, minimizing witnesses to what's obviously sabotage. But Vivian doesn't know about the cellular backup system on my security cameras. What they capture makes my jaw drop. Commissioner Wickham himself, not just his nephew or some hired thug, personally cutting my water line with bolt cutters while wearing a baseball cap, like that's some kind of disguise. A county commissioner committing felony vandalism, on camera, in broad daylight. The man's political career just became shorter than a mayfly's lifespan. The building inspector arrives within an hour, already armed with condemnation paperwork. Ray Hutchinson looks like he's attending his own funeral. "Sir, I've got orders to declare this property uninhabitable due to flooding and structural concerns," he tells me, his voice barely above a whisper. Emergency condemnation proceedings start tomorrow. The taste of corruption is metallic, bitter, like licking copper pennies while watching democracy die in small-town increments. But Ray doesn't know that Dr. Riverside is parked around the corner, waiting for exactly this moment. She arrives like environmental cavalry, presenting federal documentation that stops the county process so fast, Ray's clipboard practically catches fire. "This property is under federal environmental review," she announces with the authority of someone who's made grown developers cry. "Local condemnation is suspended pending federal environmental impact assessment." Vivian's face cycles through colors that don't exist in nature as she realizes her emergency timeline just hit a federal brick wall traveling at the speed of law. That evening, their desperation reaches criminal stupidity levels. My hotel room window gets a brick-sized makeover at 2 a.m., followed by anonymous calls threatening continued escalation if I don't accept reality and move on. The brick still smells like garden soil and poor life choices. Whoever threw it missed the security camera by maybe 6 inches, giving us crystal clear footage of Commissioner Wickham's adult son doing the deed while wearing his father's campaign t-shirt. Sometimes criminals make it so easy, you almost feel bad for them. Mrs. Cove calls the next morning with intelligence that makes the whole picture snap into focus. 3 other homeowners have received sudden, urgent offers to buy their properties at above-market prices, but only if they close within 2 weeks. The realtor keeps mentioning upcoming neighborhood changes that will devastate property values, she reports. Says we should sell immediately while we can still get premium pricing. But Commissioner Wickham's final mistake is the one that destroys everything. He calls an emergency town hall meeting about property safety concerns, but only invites homeowners who've received development offers. The agenda, which someone leaked to Mrs. Cove, already includes preliminary subdivision plans. Dr. Riverside explains that excluding affected property owners from proceedings involving their land violates federal due process when conservation easements are involved. It's like robbing a bank while live streaming on Facebook. "They're not just targeting your house anymore," she says, studying the subdivision plans that show my 2.3 acres divided into 8 lots. "They're trying to force neighborhood-wide development through manufactured crisis. The smell of fear and greed hangs over Willowbrook Heights like a toxic cloud. But tomorrow's town hall meeting is going to feature some very special guests: federal environmental agents, state prosecutors, investigative reporters, and every neighbor who's figured out they're being scammed by their own county commissioner." Vivian wanted to accelerate her timeline. Perfect. Let's see how fast federal conspiracy charges can move through the system. The day before the town hall meeting, Vivian launches her most desperate and vindictive campaign yet. If she can't steal my house legally, she's determined to destroy my reputation so thoroughly that I'll flee the neighborhood in shame. It starts at 7 a.m. when Mrs. Patterson calls, her elderly voice shaking with concern. "Garrett, dear, there's a woman going door to door with some very disturbing information about you. She's got official-looking documents and everything." By the time I drive over to investigate, staying carefully within legal distances due to the restraining order, Vivian has transformed into a one-woman propaganda machine. She's printed professional-quality flyers on expensive paper, complete with official-looking headers claiming to be from Willowbrook Heights Community Safety Initiative. The flyers feature that cropped photo of me from the building inspector visit, but now it's surrounded by completely fabricated police reports claiming I've been arrested multiple times for domestic violence, substance abuse, and threatening behavior toward women. The documents look authentic enough to fool most people who don't know what real police paperwork actually looks like. Mrs. Cove texts me photos of the flyers, and reading them makes my coffee taste like liquid betrayal. According to Vivian's creative writing exercise, I was dishonorably discharged from the Army for psychological instability and violent incidents, spent time in military prison, and have been stalking and harassing local residents since returning from overseas deployment. The smell of fresh printer ink and expensive paper stock suggests she spent serious money on this smear campaign. Someone's bankrolling her operation with resources that go way beyond what a broke, recently divorced real estate agent should have access to. But Vivian's not content with just neighborhood gossip. She creates fake social media profiles using slight variations of my name, posting confessions about being a dangerous veteran who can't adjust to civilian life, and making vague threats toward people who try to stop me from reclaiming what's mine. During my cybersecurity work, I learned that digital impersonation leaves traces that most people don't think about. IP addresses, device fingerprints, metadata in uploaded photos. It all creates a trail back to the source. Vivian's using her home computer for this operation, which means every fake post is being created from her actual internet connection. While I'm documenting her digital crimes, she escalates to real-world stalking. 3 neighbors report seeing her parked outside their homes at night, photographing their properties and apparently documenting security vulnerabilities for unknown purposes. Tom Brennan catches her measuring his fence line at midnight, wearing dark clothes and using a flashlight app on her phone. When he confronts her, she claims she's conducting safety assessments as the neighborhood HOA coordinator and threatens to have him cited for aggressive behavior toward community officials. The woman's delusion has reached levels that would make mental health professionals take notes. But here's the mini twist that changes everything. While researching Vivian's fake social media profiles, I discover she's not working alone. The accounts show coordination with at least 3 other people, all using similar language patterns and posting schedules that suggest professional social media manipulation. A reverse image search on one of the supporting documents she's been distributing reveals it's a template downloaded from a website that specializes in creating fake legal documents for entertainment purposes only. Someone taught her how to fabricate official-looking paperwork, and they're probably doing it for other victims too. Dr. Riverside calls with news that makes my blood run cold. 2 elderly homeowners in the neighborhood have already contacted real estate agents about selling, specifically mentioning their fear of living near a dangerous veteran with PTSD. She's not just trying to steal your property anymore, Dr. Riverside explains. She's systematically destroying community trust to force property sales through fear and manufactured crisis. The real revelation comes when Mrs. Cove's investigative journalism background pays off. She discovers that the Willowbrook Heights Community Safety Initiative letterhead Vivian's been using is registered to a shell company owned by Marcus Thornfield's development firm. This isn't random harassment by a desperate woman. It's a coordinated attack funded by commercial developers who've identified our neighborhood as a target for forced redevelopment. But Vivian makes one critical error in her desperation. She files additional police reports claiming I violated the restraining order by driving past her residence and making threatening gestures. The problem? My hotel receipt and GPS data prove I was 40 miles away having dinner with Colonel Hayes when the alleged incident occurred. Filing false police reports is a felony. Filing them while already under investigation for identity theft and environmental crimes is the kind of mistake that makes prosecutors smile in their sleep. That evening, I get a call from Dr. Riverside that makes me laugh out loud in my hotel room. Garrett, you need to see tomorrow's town hall agenda. They've scheduled you to be declared a threat to community safety, but they forgot one tiny detail. What's that? Federal environmental hearings take precedence over local proceedings. Commissioner Wickham just scheduled his own arrest. The taste of impending justice is sweet, metallic, like the moment you realize your enemy just checkmated themselves while trying to cheat at chess. Tomorrow's town hall meeting is going to be educational for everyone involved. The Willowbrook Heights Community Center hasn't seen this much excitement since the Great Potluck controversy of 2018. Commissioner Wickham called this emergency meeting expecting a small crowd of intimidated homeowners ready to rubber stamp his development plans. Instead, he's facing a packed auditorium that smells like community outrage mixed with fresh coffee from the church ladies who've turned this into a full-scale public event. Dr. Riverside arrives 15 minutes early, accompanied by 2 federal environmental agents whose presence makes several people in expensive suits suddenly very interested in their phones. The agents wear the kind of serious expressions that suggest someone's about to learn why federal crimes carry minimum sentences. Vivian enters like she's walking into her own coronation, wearing a navy business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. She's brought her own photographer, because apparently you need professional documentation of your federal felony conviction. Commissioner Wickham calls the meeting to order, but before he can launch into his prepared remarks about emergency property safety measures, Dr. Riverside stands up with the authority of someone who's shut down bigger operations than this small-town scam. Point of order, Commissioner. This meeting involves federally protected environmental lands, which means federal authority supersedes local proceedings. The look of confusion that crosses Wickham's face is priceless, like watching someone realize they brought a water balloon to a tank battle. He clearly doesn't understand what's happening until Federal Agent Martinez steps forward with documentation that stops the meeting cold. Dale Wickham, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit environmental crimes, abuse of public office, and destruction of federal protected property. The auditorium erupts. Phones start recording as handcuffs click around Wickham's wrists. That distinctive metallic sound that means someone's political career just ended faster than a mayfly's lifespan. But wait, there's more. Agent Martinez turns to Vivian, who's been sitting in the front row like she's about to receive an award instead of a federal indictment. Vivian Thornfield, you're under arrest for mail fraud, identity theft, environmental destruction of federal protected lands, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The sound of her expensive heels clicking against the floor as she tries to back toward the exit gets cut short by Agent Cove blocking her path. The woman who spent months pretending to be my dead wife is now learning that federal agents don't care about crocodile tears or fake restraining orders. "This is ridiculous!" she shouts, her composed facade cracking like cheap makeup in summer heat. "I was protecting an abandoned property from decay and vandalism. I have legal documentation." "Ma'am, we've reviewed your documentation," Agent Martinez says with the patience of someone who deals with criminals for a living. Forging federal environmental permits is a felony. Impersonating a deceased person to commit identity theft is another felony. Altering protected watershed drainage systems carries automatic fines of $47,000 plus mandatory restoration costs. The crowd's murmur turns into gasps as the real scope of her crimes becomes clear. This isn't just about property theft. It's about environmental destruction funded by commercial developers who thought they could intimidate a small neighborhood into selling cheap. Mrs. Cove stands up with her reporter's notebook because apparently old habits die hard. "Commissioner Wickham, can you explain why your development company filed preliminary subdivision plans for properties you don't own before any public hearings were held?" Wickham's lawyer, because of course he brought a lawyer to his own arrest, tries to intervene, but Agent Martinez isn't interested in legal theatrics. The real mic drop moment comes when I finally get to speak. Dr. Riverside hands me the microphone, and looking out at this crowd of neighbors who've supported me through federal environmental protection proceedings, I keep it simple. "Ma'am, you've been living in my house for 2 months without permission, stealing my utilities, wearing my grandmother's clothes, and impersonating my dead wife to commit federal crimes. The U.S. Attorney's Office is seeking maximum penalties, including 3 to 5 years federal prison time plus full restitution for environmental damages." The applause that follows sounds like justice being served at exactly the right temperature. Vivian's last desperate play is to claim she's the real victim, that I somehow manipulated federal environmental laws to frame her for crimes she definitely committed on camera. It's the kind of defense strategy that makes public defenders consider career changes. As federal agents escort both defendants out of the community center, Tom Brennan stands up with news that puts everything in perspective. 3 other neighborhoods in the county have reported similar schemes: fake HOA enforcement, manufactured property emergencies, coordinated harassment campaigns targeting military families and elderly residents. The flash of camera phones captures Vivian's perp walk, still wearing my grandmother's vintage brooch that she apparently forgot to remove before her arrest. The irony tastes sweet, metallic, like victory served with a side of federal conviction. Mrs. Patterson, the 80-year-old widow who brought cookies to our planning meeting, has the final word. Edwin Blackwood would be proud. Sometimes protecting what matters requires fighting people who mistake kindness for weakness. The smell of fresh justice and community coffee lingers as everyone files out, already planning the neighborhood's first legitimate homeowners association meeting in 5 years. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my own front porch, legally, permanently, and without any restraining orders, watching Mrs. Cove install the new Willowbrook Heights Conservation Trust sign at the neighborhood entrance. The morning air carries the scent of honeysuckle and the particular satisfaction that comes from watching justice work exactly as intended. Vivian Thornfield pled guilty to 14 federal charges and received 30 months in federal prison, plus $73,000 in restitution for environmental damages. Her plea agreement included testimony against Commissioner Wickham, whose development company went bankrupt 3 days after his arrest. Turns out that federal conspiracy convictions make it difficult to secure construction loans. The house feels like home again. Professional cleaning removed every trace of Vivian's occupation, though I kept the improvements she made using my stolen identity. The $12,000 in renovations inadvertently increased my property value while providing evidence for insurance fraud charges. Dr. Riverside has become more than just my environmental lawyer. She's become the neighborhood's unofficial guardian against development pressure. The conservation trust she helped reactivate has expanded to include 12 other historic properties, creating a permanent buffer against commercial overdevelopment. Conservation easements are spreading like wildfire through historic neighborhoods, she tells me over coffee in my restored kitchen. Your case has become the legal precedent for environmental protection against predatory development schemes. The community healing has been remarkable. Mrs. Cove was elected president of our newly formed Homeowners Association, Tom Brennan serves as treasurer, and Mrs. Patterson remains our unofficial historian and cookie provider. The association focuses on actual community improvement rather than manufactured crises designed to force property sales. Our first major initiative was the Edwin Blackwood Memorial Environmental Education Program for local schools. Kids learn about watershed protection, native plant conservation, and the legal frameworks that preserve historic neighborhoods. The program has expanded to 6 school districts, with Dr. Riverside's nonprofit providing curriculum and funding. The annual Willowbrook Environmental Festival takes place each spring in my backyard, where the protected natural spring becomes an outdoor classroom. Families learn about conservation while children play in the same creek where my grandfather once taught me to identify native species. Property values have increased 23% since the Conservation Trust establishment, proving that environmental protection enhances rather than restricts economic value. Zero development pressure exists in our neighborhood now, thanks to federal protections that make subdivision legally impossible. The personal transformation has been equally significant. I've converted Grandpa Edwin's workshop into a cybersecurity consulting office, allowing me to work remotely while maintaining the family property. The irony isn't lost on me that the skills I developed protecting digital assets now help me protect physical ones. Dr. Riverside and I have developed what she calls a professional partnership with personal benefits. She moved into the historic cottage 3 blocks away, restoring it according to Conservation Trust standards, while providing daily reminders that some partnerships improve with proximity. The scholarship fund established in Grandpa Edwin's name has reached $75,000, providing annual awards for students pursuing environmental law degrees. 3 recipients have already graduated and joined Dr. Riverside's nonprofit, creating a pipeline of attorneys dedicated to fighting predatory development. Mrs. Cove published her investigative series about property scams targeting military families, which has been picked up by newspapers in 6 states. Her work identified similar schemes in 14 communities, leading to federal task force investigations and legislative changes requiring environmental review for emergency property seizures. The practical takeaways have helped countless homeowners protect their property rights. Research property deed restrictions before assuming anyone has authority to claim abandonment. Document all interactions with neighbors claiming HOA authority. Conservation easements provide stronger legal protection than standard property rights, and federal environmental crimes carry serious penalties that local politicians cannot dismiss or plea bargain. Tom Brennan's Neighborhood Watch program has prevented 3 additional fraud attempts, including one targeting Mrs. Patterson during a brief hospitalization. Community awareness, it turns out, is the best defense against predatory schemes. Vivian's prison sentence includes 200 hours of mandatory community service with environmental restoration projects. She's literally replanting native species in neighborhoods she damaged, 1 tree at a time. Sometimes justice has a sense of humor. As I write this, wind chimes made from reclaimed materials hang in the restored oak tree, their gentle music mixing with the sound of children learning about watershed protection during today's conservation program. The rich soil beneath my feet smells like home, growth, and permanently protected future. The taste of victory lingers, sweet and permanent, like Sunday morning coffee shared with people who understand that protecting what matters sometimes requires fighting those who mistake kindness for weakness.